Well, greetings from Baltimore, Maryland, everyone. Yes, not another hotel room here, another scientific conference from my roommate. I'm doing my usual chauffeur duties for the week. And I have some time on my hand, so I'm going to vent my spleen again on YouTube. And I know so many of you out there enjoy watching me vent my spleen. Some of you hate it. But if you're honest, you know I have a reason to, don't you? Well, as the title of this video would suggest, I do indeed have a reason to vent my spleen again. Because some of you out there are still insisting that credulity is a virtue. And my question to you is, why? Why is credulity such a wonderful virtue that God is willing to lavish his most impressive gifts upon anyone who displays this virtue called credulity, the ability to suspend disbelief and simply believe? Why does God so esteem this character trait called credulity that he's willing to send you to heaven forever if you have this character trait? But if you have this horrible vice called skepticism, and you tend to exercise the critical faculties that God himself bestowed upon you, well, you need to go to hell. And you need to stay there. Because exercising your critical faculties and not accepting as gospel what you were told is true, that is a sin. This is what we've been told since our first weeks in Sunday school. That's not what faith is about. Faith is fidelity. I keep telling you this again and again. I keep pointing you to the definition of pistis. And I keep telling you it is context dependent. Unless you see the exact content of the belief, that word faith is not talking about credence. It's not talking about belief any more than the English noun faith is talking about belief or credence. It isn't. Faith in English also means fidelity, sincerity, loyalty, a sense of duty. That's what it meant in the Old Testament too, until the Protestants came along 1,500 years later and redefined pistis and the verb pisteuo, which means believe, supposedly, not do obedience, not do faithfulness, but believe, credence. We're supposed to believe that credulity is a wonderful virtue that God esteems above all others. And if there's one thing God really hates, well, it's skepticism, doubt. But you know what? My Bible says in 1 John 4, verse 1, I believe it is, "Beloved, don't believe every spirit. Test the spirits." And Jesus told his disciples to be wise as serpents, but gentle as doves. Well, how can you be wise as a serpent if you're going to trust everything you hear? Obviously, you cannot. So, we have a disconnect here, don't we? And there's a reason for that. Those of you out there who believe that you're being saved by your trust in a story, your ability to suspend your disbelief that stories about miracles are actually true, you're going to be rewarded with heaven because you've put aside your doubts. And you're going to make that faith commitment that the story is actually true. And you think that is the basis for your justification, your credulity. Well, I have news for you. A child-sacrificing Satanist can believe that the old story is true, and many of them have. It ain't going to help them on Judgment Day any more than it's going to help you. The people to whom our New Testament documents were written were not making a faith commitment to the truth of the overall Christian mega narrative. They knew it was true. Okay? Many of them had seen the risen Christ with their own eyes. Others were moving in the gifts of the Spirit. Paul talks about these gifts in 1 Corinthians chapter 12. He's writing to a church that has seen supernatural phenomena, unlike 95% of the churches we have today in the Anglosphere. I'm not talking about churches in the majority population, South America, Africa, Asia, where Pentecostalism is taking off and has been taking off for 50 years actually, and has spread like wildfire throughout the majority population world. I'm talking about Western countries, the Anglosphere, Canada, Britain, United States, Australia. We have these older, staid Protestant churches where you could spend your entire life attending one of these ornate buildings and never see anything of a supernatural nature. In fact, the seminary that trained me was of that sort of a philosophy, and their idea of a miracle was beating the ACLU in federal district court. These people would not have known the Holy Ghost from the ghost of Hamlet's father. But this is not the case in the first century. The people to whom these New Testament documents are written, these are people who have seen the miraculous. They don't have a problem believing that Jesus fed 5,000 with a couple of fishes and a few loaves of bread. They don't have a problem believing that he actually rose from the dead on the third day. What they do have a problem with is staying true to the executed Messiah, because it's going to mean they might get thrown in the lion's den. And so faith to them meant staying true to a despised political and religious figure. It could cost you everything, not just the ostracism of your family and the loss of your businesses. Being a Christian in the first century was a very risky business, and really today around the world it still is. But we in the West, we haven't had that sort of threat to our lives and property. And so we think faith is talking about believing in miraculous stories, things that we don't see in our churches that actually happened 2,000 years ago. Supernatural phenomena like words of knowledge, like healing, like speaking in tongues. In most of our churches, we don't see this happening. And so a lot of so-called Christians out there think that God actually owes them heaven for suspending disbelief and believing that these things actually happened way back then. But you know what? If you're attending a church that is moving in the gifts of the Spirit now, and you should be, well then, I'm telling you, faith in the old story is a non-issue. You know the gospel is true. What you don't know is if you're going to be able to withstand the type of pressures that the Antichrist could bring to bear in coming years. And that's what faith, saving faith, truly is. All right, so I know from these Protestant ideologues, if Paul himself had just told them what I told him right now, they would just raise their eyebrows and pat Paul on the back and try and sit him down and talk some sense into the apostle, because they're going to swear by their gospel according to personal sacrifice, free, easy believism. No matter what, there is no dissuading these people. I've had enough arguments in my comment section here and in other comment sections, and I know until these people feel the first licks of the flames. They're not changing their mind about anything. But for the rest of you, for those of you whose brains still work, faith, once again, is about fidelity. Saving faith is about staying true to King Jesus, despite the pressures, despite the hardships, and despite the coming persecution, which we here in the West are about to experience in ways we never dreamed imaginable. And that's why I'm talking about it. Because if you think when that day comes, and you think that you're saved simply by your willingness to suspend your disbelief about miracle stories, no. That's not what saves you. That's not what will save you. What will save you is staying true to Jesus, come hell or high water. All right. That's about as much as I'll vent my spleen today. I'll be back in El Bronx in about a week, maybe sooner. That time I want to go into a couple of more of these spurious proof texts that I've been talking about. But until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Take care.